In our past few virtual reality flights, we've stayed low and scenic. Are you ready for some cloud surfing? Today we'll be going high, staying legal, and keeping away from the clouds as we have a 70 nautical mile flight from Coral Creek to Marco Island. I'll also give you some updates on my real-life flight lessons. Let's hop into the pilot's seat and get started. Alright guys, we are in 80471. This is the reproduction of the real-life Cessna Skyhawk that my flight school has, that I did my discovery flight in. So we'll be flying in virtual reality again. I have to say, I love virtual reality, and it's a little bit of a challenge to make these videos, to not make them too long and give you a snapshot of what the flight looks like, but I'm starting to get the hang of it. So we'll get everything started up here. We'll get our battery master on, we'll get our beacon on, we'll check that we have fuel. That looks good. We'll go over here and get our throttle cracked open to 1/4 of an inch. And actually we're going to do the fuel pump for this since we're cold, so we'll put the mixture back into full rich. Get that back in. We'll turn on the fuel pump. Let that go for 3 to 5 seconds. Then we'll turn the fuel pump off. We'll head over here and lean the mixture. Check that the prop is clear. Clear prop. And if I could grab a hold of this, there we go. We'll crank over the starter and bring the mixture back in. Alright, we'll head down here and check our oil pressure. That looks good. And we're still running with the alternator off. You can see the annunciator is illuminated, so we'll turn the alternator on and the annunciator goes off. Okay, I think we are ready to get the avionics on. So it's the 2 white switches down here. What's interesting is on the real-life Skyhawk, it's a slightly, it's an earlier model, it's a 73 Skyhawk, and there are 2 white switches there, but those are for the landing and the taxi light. So when I first did the checklist, first time, when it came time to turn on the avionics, I turned on the landing and the taxi light, just because that's where it was in the simulator. Alright, we'll get our CTAF set up for our destination airport of Marco Island. There is no CTAF for Coral Creek because it's a private airport. I'm just going to dial in 122.8 and we'll use that on departure. Alright, let's load up SkyVector and I'll walk you through the flight brief. So we are departing from Coral Creek, which is an untowered private field. We're going to fly east on departure and cross at Punta Gorda. 2 reasons for that. One is to minimize my wet footprint, and the second is to avoid the wildlife refuge that's to the south here. We'll climb so that we're above the 2,500 foot airspace. We'll keep climbing to 5,500. That'll make sure that we can fly over the 4,000 foot airspace of Fort Myers. We'll overfly Naples and head to Marco Island on the south there. The plan is to fly at 5,500. We've got some clouds around that altitude, so we'll climb up to 7,500 if we end up doing too much cloud dodging. Coral Creek traffic, Cessna 80471, taxi runway 23, Coral Creek. Alright, I've got my rudder pedals hooked up again. I am awful at rudder pedals, just like in the real aircraft, which is why I'm using them more now in the sim. The sim version is different, so they don't really directly translate, but they do help you get the idea of, you know, left, right with your feet. Twist access on the joystick, which is what I normally use, is much easier. You're almost kind of just pointing the nose with the twist access, and the plane goes where you point it. Not with rudder pedals. You have to kind of go back and forth to keep yourself on the center line. We also have differential brakes with toe brakes, and for some reason I always step on the right one more here in the sim version, so I just pulled off the center line. We'll get everything set up. We'll get our transponder to mode seat. We'll make sure that our mixture is full. We'll get our lights on. Normally we'd do a run-up at this point, but I'm skipping the run-up just to get us on our way. Coral Creek traffic, Cessna 80471, departing runway 23, left downwind departure to the east, climbing 5,500 Coral Creek. In the background, we've got live ATC.net streaming. It's for the nearest Coward field. It's around 8 a.m. here in game time. So I've got a great morning to fly, and you can hear the controller saying good morning to everybody. So I've got the actual time for live ATC streaming. Just like in my last video, I'm going to try to start flying the simulated Cessna a little bit more like what I'm learning in my flight lessons. So in my flight lessons, I'm pitching for 80 when we take off. So I'm going to try that here. I will say, you know, the simulated Cessna doesn't really fly exactly like the real Cessna. I guess that's no surprise. So some things will be different, but I can try to be a bit consistent. And standard disclaimer, I'm obviously not a CFI, I'm not even a pilot, I have 1 flight hour, so anything you hear me talking about is for simulated purposes only in the simulator. Okay, we've rotated, and that actually worked pretty well. Sometimes with rudder pedals I get a little over-aggressive on the rollout, and then when we take off, you know, have a lot of yaw that I'll have to correct for. Alright, I'm going to pitch for 80, and I'm also going to take a look at the attitude indicator there to see how many degrees we're pitching. The last time I pitched for 80 it was around 6 to 8 degrees on the attitude indicator, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in real life it actually feels like a lot. You're tilted back, and you know, you're kind of tilted back into your seat pointing up. If you'd asked me after we did the real life takeoff, how many degrees were we tilted up, I definitely wouldn't have said, you know, 8. Alright, we're within 300 feet of traffic pattern altitude, so we're going to do our left crosswind turn. We've got Coral Creek Golf Course underneath us. A lot of times I use golf courses as visual references in the simulator, but Florida, as far as I could tell, is one giant golf course. You're going to see golf course after golf course pop up in this video. So while we are climbing out here, I'll tell you about my progress. So no surprise, I decided to move forward with lessons. If you heard my Discovery flight video and the excitement in my voice, you knew that was obvious. To take my first lesson, there's actually not a lot of requirements, but I am getting a jump on the requirements that I'll need before I solo. So 2 things. One is you need to register to get a student pilot certificate. You need to have that before you can solo, and you do that through the FAA's IACRA website, which is very easy. It's like your name and your address and stuff like that. You fill out a portion, and then your flight school and your CFI fills out the other portion. So this is my actual application. I've obviously blocked out the personal details. And then in parallel, you need to get a Class 3 medical. That one has its own FAA website application, which is very involved. It's like list every doctor appointment you've had for the past 3 years, you know, list every medication, medical history type stuff, and then get a physical with an approved aviation medical expert, AME. So I've got that scheduled. That's about a week from now. Although you don't need that to start your lessons, you need it before soloing, and everybody's advice to me was get that out of the way. You know, if you had a disqualifying medical condition, you'd want to know that before you spent a lot of money buying stuff. Now, on that note, I did decide to lean forward and buy my aviation headset. Otherwise, I have to use the school's community one, which is kind of like using community bowling shoes. So I'd rather actually just have my own headset for my first lesson. If something were to happen and I were medically disqualified, which I don't think is going to happen, then I'm going to have an awesome headset for doing my flight sim videos. In fact, I'm already eyeing up an adapter that, you know, connects it to the USB port on my computer. I decided to go with the David Quark passive headset. I like the fact that it doesn't require batteries, it's not active, so they can't go dead, and it's just going to work. And when I get my pilot certificate, then it will become my passenger headset. Then I can treat myself to a pair of Bose A20s. But I think it'll be perfect for flight training, and to be honest, I think it's actually good to be able to hear a little bit of the engine noise in flight training, as opposed to having it canceled out with active noise canceling. I wore the military version of these in my Discovery flight, and they were kind of broken, so the boom mic kept barn dooring away from my face. But it will be nice to have a brand new headset that's all mine. Other than that, you know, your flight school is going to sell a lot of this stuff. Most likely mine has everything that you could want to buy. You don't have to buy it on your own. I chose to do that with the headset, but they have a package that has all the books and stuff that you'll need that you can buy. So I'll wait until I see what's in that before I start buying more stuff. You know, like one of the things that's in the package is your pilot logbook, so no need to spend money on that. Alright, if you look at the altimeter, you can see that we are climbing up to 7,000. So as predicted, all these clouds were around the 4,500 to 6,500 altitude, and it was becoming a challenge to stay legal and dodge them, so we're going to climb above them. For the airspace that we're in, the way that I remember it is 3 Cessna 152s, so we need 3 statute miles of visibility. We need 1,000 feet above a cloud, 500 feet below a cloud, and 2,000 feet lateral from the cloud. And the way I've been gauging 2,000 feet in the simulator is it's about half a mile, in the neighborhood of that. And when you fly the pattern, you're flying about half a mile from the runway. So I kind of treat the cloud as the runway and look out the strut and see how far away I am from the cloud. I'll be curious what I get instructed in real life. That's just how I do it in the sim. So here we are in virtual reality, and guys, this looks amazing. I'm always saying this in virtual reality. It's why I keep doing flights in VR. I've got the clouds set to ultra, so even though I have a medium tiered system, it's able to handle ultra clouds in VR as long as you turn many of the other settings down to low or medium. And it's worth it. If you're gonna fly with clouds in VR, go for ultra. This looks great. This looks real. I'm using an Oculus Rift S for my VR headset, and I'm using Oculus Mirror to stitch the left and right eyes together, which is why you see some of that black banding sometimes. Alright, that is Fort Myers, and I could see that there's traffic departing. Now we are all the way up at 7,500 feet, so I'm not expecting us to be a factor for them, but let's keep an eye on them. See them, they're just turning right off the departure end of the field, so that looks good. And they are no factor. That looks great. It's really cool to spot traffic in VR. My home airport is untowered, but it's underneath a Tersa for a Class Delta field, and they have an agreement with the controlling agency there where each aircraft is assigned a permanent squawk code. So as soon as we get up to altitude, we end up establishing communications with the Tersa. That means for all you flight sim nerds out there who like to listen to live ATC, you will hear me on liveatc.net for my home airport once I start making radio calls. In fact, after my Discovery flight, I went back and found the time frame that we were flying in and listened to it. I could hear all my instructors' calls on the radio that I was able to hear when I was in the cockpit with them, which was really cool. Alright, we've got another VFR reference, which is a lake, and I will say, it's almost comical. I've been flying around Pennsylvania in the simulator, and a lot of times I'll use lakes and golf courses as VFR waypoints because they're kind of few and far between. But in Florida, there is water everywhere, and there are golf courses everywhere. So it's been a challenge trying to figure out exactly which lake I was looking at and which golf course I was looking at. I mean, like, you can't walk, 50 feet without tripping over another golf course. It seems, at least, on this route that I'm flying here. One of the other challenges is the way the houses are laid out is they sort of look like golf courses. They're in these kind of sinuous patterns that have green all around them. Alright, we've got a Garmin, so let's use it. We can see that we are getting in the neighborhood of our destination, so I'm going to switch over to CTAF for Marco Island. The real-life version of this Cessna has a GNS 430, and we were using it to tell how many miles we were from the field. Now, I think I cut out the segment before, but because we flew all the way up to 7,500, I'd weaned the mixture for the higher altitude. We'll put the mixture back in. now that we are descending to 3,500. And it's another golf course. Now that's a big one, so that one's a pretty decent reference point. One of the other sim versus reality things that was different, I'll comment on from my Discovery flight, is roads were a bit harder to spot, I would say. There was a main road that we were following, and we went up to 4,500 feet. So at that altitude, it was really hard for me to figure out where we were along that road by trying to spot individual buildings, because they kind of all looked alike. And we were doing a lot of turns, practicing turns, so it was a little disorienting. I didn't lose my position from like northwest, southeast, but when you are used to driving on roads in real life and you're looking at them from the air, everything looks different. And then if you keep turning around, so you're looking at the same thing from different angles, it gets a little bit hard to mentally map. Oh, okay, that's the building that sells the flowers, that kind of has a red roof at that point along the road. All right, we are passing over Naples Airport, which means we are getting pretty close to our destination. Again, we're overflying their airspace, so we planned this flight so that we wouldn't need to do any transitions. We're just going to fly above where their airspace ends. And we need to start descending. So our goal is to approach on a 45-degree angle to enter the downwind for runway 33. It's right pattern traffic, so that means we've got to turn here to the east, and then we're going to turn again and approach the runway from the northeast. Spotting the field in a flat landscape in VR is particularly challenging because everything kind of blurs out in the distance, but you start to get a hang for it, especially if there's trees around the field. So I can see there's a patch up ahead that's roughly long, and that's where I expect the field to be. So I'm pretty sure that I've got the field in sight, and that's what I'm going to head for. We had some nice north-south roads to follow, and then we've got some roads that have curves on them, like this one, Davis Boulevard, that make good visual waypoints. I will say again, this is much easier to do in the sim than it was in real life. Maybe because in the sim I'm flying in a straight line to my destination. So in real life we were doing just a lot, like I said, a lot of turns, and that was a little disorienting to keep an eyeball on how things were laid out. You kind of had to mentally remap in your mind, rotate the image in your mind of what the map looked like to try to figure out which roads you were looking at when you look down from the sky. So now we've definitely got the field in sight. That is straight ahead, and we are approaching on our 45-degree angle. Yet another golf course off to our side here. That's Naples Lakes Country Club. We saw that, or I saw that in the pre-flight planning when I brought up Google Maps. I will tell you that I've been using Google Earth in virtual reality lately as a supplement to help me with getting oriented to how my home airport area looks from the air, and that's been really good because you can rotate around, you can look at stuff from different angles, spotting where my house was from the air, picking out landmarks. So I think that will be an interesting supplement to help orientate myself to how things are going to look. Alright, we are entering the right downwind, so we've got the field on our right, and we just rolled out. Goal is to get the field about halfway up the strut, and perfect. That's exactly where we want it to be. I think I said runway 33 before, but this is 35, so it's almost a north-south runway. So now we're going to fly the downwind. We are just a hair above traffic pattern altitude. I've already picked out my turn for base, so we're going to turn here, and I'm aiming for that body of water that's straight ahead. And what's great about VR is you can, look around the pillar, turn your head to the right. There we go. Got the field eyeballed. And we're rolling out with the body of water, the edge of the body of water straight on my nose. Now we're turning final. And it's looking pretty good. Got my speed at 80. We're a little high, we've got some pappy lights, but we could fix that. When I turned base, I thought I was a bit low, so I leveled out for a bit. And now I'm the opposite, I'm a bit high. So I'm going to lose a bit of altitude here. I'm aiming for those 2 white blocks. Just past the pappy lights. And got a little too much energy. But we're doing okay. We're drifting to the left of center line. And I completely forgot I had rudder pedals. I just tried to use the twist axis on my joystick, which did nothing because I have it turned off so I could use the rudder pedals. Then I had a brief "oh no" as we started to careen off towards the left before I remembered I'd have to use my rudder pedals. Alright, we're going to park right here and get everything shut down. I love this interior, by the way, guys. Even if it weren't a replica of the aircraft that I actually flew, it's a great interior. I love the flavor of it. So check out the video details for the link. Alright, another virtual reality flight, and it was really cool to go up high and to see some clouds, do a little bit of cloud surfing, and just see all the sights. Be sure to try this flight. It's easy, you can follow the coast, it doesn't require a lot of planning other than getting your altitude rights for the airspaces, but it's very scenic. Everything is in photogrammetry the entire way. So in terms of lessons, you heard me talk a lot about it, still pretty excited. My next lesson is 1 week from today, and my Class 3 medical physical is the week after that, a couple days after that. So I should have some more to talk about, probably not for my next video, because I'll probably make another one before then, but the video after that. I'll let you know how it progresses. If you enjoy content like this, be sure to click that like button, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, as always, for flying along with me, and stay tuned for further flight adventures.